Welcome back. So it is day 4 now of uploading consistently, and from this, I've had an epiphany. So, really looking at the root of what our productivity in the modern day is limited in, we find that, especially in a period of self reflection, I realized this. When I was looking to start my own business as a permaculture designer, I was rooted in finding how to function in the most efficient way possible. Now, I've read tons of books about this, about sales, general productivity, about deep work, etc. And many of these books, articles, these videos that tell you, okay, this is how to do. Wake up at 5:30 a.m. Chug 5 gallons of coffee, work 17 hours a day, sleep 4 hours. For a time, it gets you where you want to be, but you crash very quick. And so, a more sustainable, more holistic view of productivity is needed for us to function consistently. And this is where I realized a system of productivity that is rooted in care of the asset, so to speak, ourselves, rather than purely focusing on the metric of producing more all the time. This is what we need to prioritize. So we can link this to real life examples when we see that most productivity advice out there is trash. It is trash. Simple enough, but why? Why is this? So when we see on the internet these hustle culture norms of waking up at 5:30 a.m., working for countless hours, 17, 18 hours a day, with no breaks in between, no time for ourselves. This is based on the corporate model of productivity that we see and is so prevalent in law firms, institutions like JP Morgan Chase, law firms in London and New York, investment banking, etc. These are the pretty toxic work cultures. And their employees, through commitment to the work and by wanting to stand out, do these extremely long hours, lack of sleep, functioning on vast amounts of caffeine. Eventually, that leads to either burnout or death. And if you've ever watched the show Industry, you'll see this is demonstrated in a work culture that prioritizes not its own people, but only its output. It's such a toxic culture. And this is where we need to evolve, because innovation in this model that industry puts forward, it is a TV show, but it highlights some very real world problems. There is no room for innovation. It's simply a case of producing more all the time. And everyone's in overdrive. Nobody has room to think outside the box. And this is one of the biggest limits of such big organizations and how we as small entrepreneurs gain the upper hand. Now, a quick history lesson for you. The corporate model of productivity that prioritizes output at the expense of innovation was formulated in the 18th century and early 19th century at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. And you may be thinking, how did this model come about? Where is it based? Good question. It is actually based in the military. So the military model of efficiency, this is warfare, tactics, etc. This is very much a destructive mentality when applied constantly. Obviously, there are times for high intensity. However, when we look at our efficiency in productivity and in corporate models, there is a constant barrage of things being thrown at us. This is not what our modern day innovation was built for. As was said before, the Industrial Revolution and corporate models of productivity, which are closely associated and inseparable from each other in some ways, were not built for our modern knowledge work and innovation, but instead for the mass production of goods. Totally two different systems, and yet we still use the less efficient system today. Why? That's because people within these systems, these industrial systems, these corporate systems, haven't had time to think. They're constantly on overdrive, and innovation is a word disassociated from this model. So they still use the more inefficient model for the sake of just continuing doing it like we always have done it. And this is a truly bad way to do things. But in the case of us wanting to get the upper hand as our new age entrepreneurs who value ecological and new ways of doing things, this is where we can bring a new flavor to business, to commerce, etc. So what is the solution? This is what I call the holistic productivity model, and this prioritizes both a healthy medium of output and innovation, and thus brings more value to the table, meaning when we value both our output and our innovation, we bring a flavor that is more irreplaceable, a flavor that gives the consumer a greater balance of quantity and quality. And this is where serving our target market really comes into its own, and how we can really give our dream customers that value at our highest contribution. So we can encapsulate this into a equation. This is the metric of quantity plus quality equals innovation. This is the quintessential holistic productivity model. At the same time, when we think of industrial productivity, it would ask, how much can you produce? Whereas holistic productivity asks, what are you here to produce? Or is what I'm doing in alignment with my highest contribution? This is what we need to meditate on and really give ourselves the mental headspace to realize, is what I'm doing contributing to my highest purpose? Is it what I was called to do? Is this contributing to the goal that God has endowed me with? This is what we need to constantly reassess as new age entrepreneurs who value purpose, not simply making money, but contribution to a greater whole. This is what our priority should be. Now, within the holistic productivity model, there are 4 key aspects of the framework of holistic productivity. These include, and they are the 4 H's: physical health, mental health, emotional health, and spiritual health. Now, the reasons for these is safeguarding our different areas of health contribute to different means and different goals that contribute to our greater whole. What does this mean? So our physical health, by safeguarding this through strength training, cardio, cold heat therapy, sauna, cold exposure, this fosters energy and resilience, and we need this through constant awareness of how we can approach our work with vigor and with tenacity. With the safeguarding our mental health through meditation practices or non-sleep deep rest, we increase our focus and clarity. This is what we need for bouts of deep work. The emotional health, our emotional health, through safeguarding this through gratitude journaling and daily and weekly reflections, mostly journaling as well. This creates a sustainability in our routines that we can constantly reaffirm and reinforce this routine, and it becomes something we can sustain over time, hence sustainability. And our spiritual health, this may be a bit wishy-washy to some of you. However, through engaging and protecting our spiritual health through prayer, through trusting in God that He has our best interests and He will care for what we are doing, it will take care of that which we cannot control. It contributes to our meaning and direct. If we are living in accordance with what we feel God has endowed us to do, we feel a greater sense of freedom. It's like the serenity prayer that many recovering alcoholics say. Give me wisdom to change what I can change, something that I can change, and wisdom to know the difference. I've absolutely messed that up, so sorry. But you get the point. Point is, trusting in a greater power, something that is higher than ourselves, lends us a sense of freedom, and this is what we must cultivate. Also engaging in learning. When we learn, doing it with a sense of joy, with a sense of awe. So play, doing what we enjoy through when we learn, reading absolutely brilliant books, playing games, spending time in nature without your phone, this is the key word. This is what leads to our greatest and highest purpose and innovation. Now, I want to bring to you a case study of a man who embodied these traits to their fullest entirety. This is the founder of Apple, Steve Jobs. And here we can see that during Jobs' day, he woke up first of all at 6 to 6:30. First of all, safeguarding his mental health, using it for reflection, meditation, and quiet, uninterrupted work before his family woke up. His physical health, he would eat a simple diet, that of, for a time, only eating fruit, vegetables, and smoothies. This is quite famous. He would also reduce his decision fatigue. This is the process of spending mental energy on trivial matters that don't really contribute to our highest purpose. He would wear a uniform, this famous uniform of the black turtleneck and jeans and sneakers every day, so he could devote his mental energy to the most important managerial decisions at Apple. He was also well known for taking walking meetings meetings where he would walk and discuss with his colleagues at Apple about ideas for the company rather than in meeting rooms. In this way, he was much more active. His active state of awareness through physical movement, this is walking, rather than passively in a meeting room, he was engaging more actively. This was so instrumental for Jobs' innovation and creativity because a core tenet of his work ethic was trying to eliminate emails as much as possible when they were not needed. He would value face-to-face interaction above email, although he did use email as an invaluable tool, not as a simple means for an easier method of communication. Face-to-face communication is king in every way. If we can do it, we should. This is basic. And finally, Jobs after work would actively unwind to be fully present with his family. He would safeguard his emotional health and spiritual health. Often getting back at 5 p.m., he would sit down to have dinner with his wife and his children and then retire to engage in some personal reflection again. This would be improvements and mishaps that happened during that day, improvements that he could implement into his character, whilst also listening to music. This would be preferably Bob Dylan or Bach, whilst meditating and reading good books. In this way, Jobs embodied what Greg McKeown would call the essentialist ethic of less but better. This was documented in Greg McKeown's book, Essentialism, brilliant book. But here we see he was fully engaged in the few things he devoted himself to completely, but he was staunchly grounded in the holistic model of productivity, that is, through actively protecting the asset, this is himself, and by caring for his health in the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual realms. Protecting the asset is the biggest thing we can do as New Age entrepreneurs because from ourselves we gain our most important decisions, and this is where our competitive edge is found. If we invest in ourselves above all else by safeguarding our mind and our body as our most important assets, this by default leads to a greater productivity and innovation. This is what we should embody as New Age entrepreneurs, as ecologically minded entrepreneurs, and as New Age thinkers. This is where we will contribute to the world at our highest level, and we will serve those people who we are called to serve at our highest level as well. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next video. God bless.